Askreddit by deleted. Police officers of Reddit, what are you thinking when you see cases like George Floyd? Deleted. For all the police officers here, what would the charges be if one of the bystanders pulled the police officer off of the poor guy? Wow, thanks for gold. Assault on a police officer, obstruction of justice, and probably resisting arrest, depending on state laws of course, that gets tossed in as an easy one to charge, but usually gets played off in court. Not a local, I'm a Fed 5 years into the job. George Floyd was murdered and it's fucking disgusting. We're trained that anything involving the neck is a no-go and is considered deadly force. We were also trained that if you make an arrest in a prone position, you search and then immediately move them onto their side or a seated position because the risk of asphyxiation is so great. If a suspect says they can't breathe, believe them and take measures to correct to it. This training is reinforced at least twice a year in our use of force training. These officers deserve to spend the rest of their lives in prison. It's reassuring to hear this. Any suggestions on how employment screening could be improved to avoid letting people like this join the ranks and tarnish the reputation of all the good cops? Retired after 28 years. Nothing less than murder. All the guys I work with would never have considered doing something like that. You treat combative in custodies once they are secured as human beings. Nothing should be personal. Once they've been subdued and you are safe as an officer, you stand him up, pat him down and understand that your arrestee is at a low point in his life. Give him some dignity and you'll generally get his respect. It works 90+% of the time. That man was subdued and nobody should have been on him at that point. Deleted. I'm a police officer in California. I am absolutely disgusted by the officer's actions. When someone is in our custody, you must treat them properly. I don't care if they are arrested for murder or forgery. They are a human with a story and they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. I had tears streaming down my face watching the video of George Floyd. We swore to protect our communities and that's what we set out to do every day. Putting a knee into the neck of a handcuffed man for an extended period of time isn't protecting. A man has lost his life due to the gross negligence of an evil person. May he rest in peace. Makes it harder to protect communities when you lose the trust of the public. These situations hurt you all, unfortunately. Cop here. Disgusted. There are a 1,000 reasons why this shouldn't have happened. Simple, easy, steps that should have been taken. Lessons that policing has learned over the past 200 years and basic things taught in every academy. Make no mistake, this was murder. Maybe not premeditated murder, but nonetheless murder. I will be angry if those officers do not get indicted. He's apparently been involved in at least 2 other deaths, including shooting a fleeing suspect in the back. I don't know, given that history, premeditation seems reasonable. Didn't the same happen in New York a few years ago with Eric Garner being put in a chokehold? Yup, sure did. All the cops got off. Deleted. Current sheriff's deputy from the Midwest here. It's a constant point emphasized in defensive tactics training that you don't choke someone or go for the neck. Unless the suspect has the upper hand and your curtains are closing and it's your last resort to survive. Obviously that wasn't the situation here. Deleted. I was a cop in the military. In the police academy, this was one of the things that taught us not to do as it could crush the windpipe. The only time I was ever taught to use chokes and neck holds was in combat training for deployments. But when we got back, we always had to attend retraining classes to relearn what we can't do stateside. It's amazing that time and time again you see military saying this is exactly not what to do, but for some reason the civilian trainers seem to forget to teach the same. Would I rather be a POW to an American soldier vs American cop? I'll take soldier every time. As a son of a former police officer, my dad worked really hard to be an honest cop. His department was full of racists. They didn't like him because he was a decent cop. They couldn't do anything wrong on front of him. We saw the news together and I saw him wipe a tear, but tried really hard to hide it. I know he's sad and I don't wanna push him to talk about it, but we both know things like this is always gonna happen, and that is a really sad fact. I can't possibly understand why a human being would do something like this. My grandfather was NYPD beat cop, passed over for promotions and refused to have a partner when he could. Said it was because he found out that most other cops couldn't be trusted. He was on the force for nearly 35 years, from the time he got out of WWII to the early 90s. I've got a lot of family history with the NYPD and the FDNY. I had 4 cousins in the NYPD. All of them quit after saying cops are just too untrustworthy to be around. 3 of them joined up the FDNY instead. Now I got 9 cousins and 4 uncles on the FDNY, or formerly. I work for a US federal bureau but am not a local police officer. All 4 cops need to go to jail. Derek Chauvin, the cop with the knee on George's neck, should have gone to jail long ago. The guy apparently has a history of doing this. This is his 3rd time in 15 years. Black people need to keep fighting and white Asian Latino people need to support them. Justice for cases like this won't come easy, and it won't come soon. But if they keep fighting, I truly believe that one day, eventually, it will come. My former local precinct. They did nothing except eat pizza and hang out at the gas station across from where this happened. Their whole precinct needs to be investigated. They were never bothered with doing their job. Retired. It disgusts me as the job is difficult enough as it is, working mostly in sensitive neighborhoods. Brutality like this makes it far more difficult. How difficult was it for you to build community trust? Did you have to continuously fight against atrocities such as the recent cases, or was your community more sheltered from those issues? Serious question to the police officers participating in this discussion. Obviously there are a myriad of factors that possibly contributed to this incident, from poor training, to an officer being unfit for duty, etc. My question is, how is it possible that the 3 other officers on the scene took no steps to intervene, or at the very least, check on the status of the victim? Is there any reason for their lack of awareness or decision to stand aside while they, along with many other bystanders, can clearly see the man dying in front of them? What justification, if any, is possible in this situation? Ex-tribal officer, fuck if I know. We all had our heated moments, but you learn to tag out other officers when you need to. If someone is getting upset, you tap them, whisper that you'll take it and to take a breather, and now you have a fresh calm perspective. That other cops should have tapped out his partner instead of standing there like a slack-jawed moron. Disgusted, especially by the frequency of these events. Glad that I work in a place where we're trained for years before we ever put on a uniform that communication is our greatest tool. Sad to know that this is going to happen again and again. As a Baltimore resident, do you think it's just the sheer size of the force that lets these situations continue to happen? I don't envy the officers who have to essentially work in a war zone, but sometimes it feels like there's no light at the end of our tunnel for making the city safer and for ending police corruption and misconduct. Deleted. Thanks for your thoughts. It seems like most officers have had training pertaining to positional asphyxiation when they have someone in handcuffs. Can you elaborate on that at all? I have a degree in law enforcement and work in corrections in Minnesota. My thoughts are fuck that guy. Nobody is taught to put their knee on a guy's neck and leave it there until he passes out and dies. He may as well have had his hands around the man's neck. If I were to go off the video evidence, the officer should be arrested for murder. That's the crazy thing about this case. It couldn't be more blatant. The footage was clear, long-lasting and heart-wrenching. If there isn't hell to pay with this clear of evidence, then protests are absolutely justified. I'd put a serious tag if I were you. I don't know. I don't think it's the sort of thing people joke about. That said, I reckon there'll be a lot of not a police officer but comments. When I went through the academy in 1990, I had to complete 480 hours of basic mandate training. At that time, someone who wanted to be a hairstylist had to complete 2,400 hours of training. That might be one of the issues as mentioned previously. My roommate's only been a cop for a few years, but he got into a huge rant about how that is not how you choke someone in a way to detain them. The cop should be tried in court for manslaughter at the very least, and if they think they can make a case for murder, go for it. I'm British but live in America. There is such a different mindset to policing back home in my experience, albeit I grew up in the countryside and lived in a quiet city. My friend is an officer today and he was trained to use his words, not his weapons on first instinct. He said you are supposed to police by consent. It's police service, not force after all. I know Hot Fuzz is a comedy, but when Simon Pegg tells Nick Frost his most important tool is his logbook, it's so true. I never feared the police when we were out and about back home. Probably because your average Bobby doesn't have a gun. In America, I'm not so sure I have that same confidence. Those that join the police to wield power and fear need to be rooted out. Those that stand by and say nothing of their colleagues who do wrong also need to be gone. Policed by consent is something that was drummed into me by my history law teacher. The entire ethos of policing is different here. Fucking horrified. Regardless of the act committed, you just don't odd that to people. I seriously question the culture on that team. Edit, and some people are being a bit dense. I am from another continent. Yes, other countries exist. Yes, I have publicly declared my feelings for this incident on other social media, where my name actually shows. No, I won't do it on here, because if we have social media accounts without names on them, they must conform to our regulations, and therefore I place to express myself as a cop and a person at the same time. No, I don't care if you don't like that. The other officer standing around couldn't care less what he was doing. He died in the middle of 3 other officers and bystanders. Their team is entirely fucked. Horrified. When you have someone in custody, you are responsible for their safety and well-being. Why don't we see police officers or departments come out and condemn things like this when they happen? I was on a police subreddit yesterday and most people seem to agree with you, and stressing that this is less common than the media would have us believe. It was basically boiled down to, yeah, this is bad. The media jumps on it and the police are not set up to fight a PR battle with the media. I understand that argument,